My name is Rebecca Krupke. I'm an artist, an oil painter from Bangor, and I'm going to talk about my obsession with houses. This is my father's house he grew up in Minnesota. It's a farmhouse, and I was lucky enough to tour this house when I was 10 years old before it was torn down. And also, my grandfather is an oil painter, and this is him and my grandmother in front of his house in Bradford, Maine. He also has an old farmhouse, and I used to spend my days playing in this house amongst his unfinished canvases. He had stacks of them in the attic, and I think that's where the connection between home and art came in my life. For my senior thesis at UMaine, I had an exhibit called Speak to Me. It was on my grandfather's house, and I wanted to attack the five senses in the viewer. So when you walked into the space, you had 15 original oil paintings of the home on the walls that I had made. There was furniture, artifacts, old bottles that they had, and I also did a series of printmaking pieces. So they had schematic drawings of the house with images of my youth in the middle, photo etched. I sent them in an envelope to my grandfather's house, and it was returned to sender because he had passed at the time. I opened them up and displayed them in the room. So when you walked inside the room, you closed the door, and there's wallpaper from their house surrounding you, and their clothing was on the hangers, and I also had a calendar with the date that they moved out of the house that my grandmother actually made. And when you walked inside, I wanted to make sure I attacked all those five senses. So smell, sound, taste, touch, everything. So you truly got a sense of what it was like to walk into the space that I wanted you to be in. This is a video that I created with images of my grandparents and my parents, and then my time as a youth within the home. So that was on loop when you were in the space. I covered the walls in Noxzema, because my grandmother loved Noxzema. And when I graduated, I started to look at houses in a different way. I started to see them on the landscape that they sat on, and how they kind of became a vessel of memory making, and how they kind of indicatively looked like a human form. And what is it like when life leaves that form? When I had my artist residency in Canada, I saw this particular house. And this one caught my eye because it had a huge sign on the side of it. Instead of saying for sale, it said to be moved. And to me, that just was such a connection with everything I was doing. So I took the entire year I was up there and made an installation piece on this particular home. At the end of my residency, unfortunately, they did tear it down. It wasn't able to be bought. So the structure in the middle is a cloth void I have, and dirt from the home, the place where the home was sitting, with pottery that I found after they buried the house. This particular piece also had, similar to my grandfather's installation piece, it had 15 paintings, and I kind of like to look at them as little selfies of the house, I guess. They're little captures and details and moments that the home had as a way of truly wanting to encapsulate and put down in history that this home did live, it did exist. And I think that's kind of what we all want as humans as well. I was able to go through the house before it was torn down, and I got to walk around and look at the generations of wallpaper that were on the wall to show me how many generations were actually living in the home. So that was a beautiful thing. This is a monoprint I had in the show. And this is one of the last images I got of the house when I was driving by one day. And I looked, and there was a panel of glass broken. And this curtain was blowing out of the window, and it was almost symbolizing like a goodbye. And that was the last time I saw it before it was buried. So when I came back to Maine, I started to view the landscape around the house itself. And what does it signify? Like, how does it sit on the land? How is it interacting with the land? Because the Canadian houses are so good at looking at the landscape before they plop the house down. And then I started to wanting to go more inside, get inside. Because what does it mean when somebody lets you in their house? You have exterior versus interior, public versus private. How intimate can we become with a home when somebody lets us in? And what kind of moments do you get, what glimpses do you get of their life and the life that they live within these walls? I wanted to capture that in painting as much as I possibly could, those little tiny glimpses of the home within, the life within the home, and what does it feel like, how does it move you, and pull out different memories from your own youth. This particular painting was my moment where I decided I had to let go. So it took me 8 months to do it because I wanted it to go a direction that it was not wanting to go. And I had to realize, okay, maybe this thing has its own life, and maybe I'll just let it be what it needs to be. Like I said, I started to kind of pull back with my work. Instead of being more intimate with the pieces, I wanted to look at the landscape that they were sitting on top of. And I noticed this happening, this shift happened after I came home from Prince Edward Island to Maine. And I started to really look at the way things were sitting. So my work kind of has evolved from the structure, the physical structure of a house, to the intimate interior memory recall type images, to the landscape within that the building, the structure was sitting on. And it dawned on me that I believe my work has shifted from the home, which it still is about the home, but the home as a structure to the home as an actual place of being. And Maine is my home, and it's the place I love, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm driven, and I think that I still have a good journey to take.